Nacional y también el ministro de Justicia y Seguridad, entre otros funcionarios del gabinete de gobierno. Ya están al interior de la Casa Blanca y están...
No, yo soy Rebeca.
Alex, Alex, are we out and out to go on both? Hey, Alex. Well, later, when you're out. We'll slow roll a little bit.
Can you give me your two?
And now
Do one more. Put the whole group. This is yeah, good. Get in here.
3, 2, 1.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. Take it down. Okay. This is your man, right? He's
Yes.
supposed to be I'll tell you who's good. Whoever sends us those tapes that we get, they become sensations in this country. The tapes, getting out of the planes. That's what people want to see. Respect. They want to see respect. They don't have respect. They're starting to have it here too, but they don't have the respect. Whoever does that does a great job.
Oh, we have a team, yeah.
You got a good team. Can I use them?
Yes. It's all yours.
Even the sound, you know,
Yeah.
the whole deal. It's very good.
It's like a movie. It's a movie. It's a soundtrack, but it's real. And
Cecil B. DeMille. You ever hear of Cecil B. DeMille? Great movie. The great movie, the greatest of all. But no, it's really, and I would say Marco has a big impact.
yes.
It's all over. It's being played all over. Because they want to stop crime. They want to stop crime. Let's see what stop crime.
It's the only way.
Let them in, please.
It's the only way.
So you're just going to have a small group, a small gathering of
Yeah.
journalists.
It was nice.
They've got it.
Oh, okay. Given the ratings they gave you.
The ratings, I can
They haven't been saying that. You give me the ratings they have. Yes. Exactly.
You know, with Biden, you got like one guy, hello. Really, really good. Careful, watch the Oval Office. Watch the resolute desk. We don't want it, we just sent it out first.
No.
Keep it down. We don't need cameras in. That sounded like a pretty bad crash. You see a broken desk. Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to have a friend of mine because we went through this together and got along very well for my entire period of time. So I knew him as a very young man. Now he's just a young man, and he's done a fantastic job. Mr. President, it's an honor to have you.
Thank you.
You're doing incredibly for your country, and we appreciate working with you because you want to stop crime, and so do we. And it's very, very effective. And I want to just say hello to the people of El Salvador and say they have one hell of a president. Okay, and I mean that, and I know him well. I know him as a very young man, Marco, even younger than you. You know, he started pretty young.
He'll always be younger.
Young at heart.
Bukele a la capital de los Estados Unidos, donde ya fue recibido por el presidente de la nación norteamericana, Donald Trump. Precisamente fue él el que salió a recibirle. Estamos viendo imágenes en este momento de la conferencia de prensa. ¿Ya tenemos audio? ¿Ya tenemos audio de nuevo? Bueno, vamos a empezar con la señal, pero quiero decirles de que en este momento están dando palabras conjuntas después de estas palabras con la prensa, preguntas. Creo que van a tener, bueno, no creo, es seguro, van a tener una reunión privada en conjunto. Se hace acompañar el presidente Nayib Bukele por sus más emblemáticos colaboradores de los ministerios de Justicia, de Defensa. Está la canciller de la República, el ministro de Justicia Gustavo Villatoro, el ministro de la Defensa Nacional Francis Merino Monroy, también está la embajadora Milena Mayorga, la señora canciller de la República Alexandra Gil Tinoco y otros funcionarios también por parte del señor presidente de los Estados Unidos, Donald Trump. Está J.D. Vance, ¿verdad?, como vicepresidente de los Estados Unidos. También está Marco Rubio, el secretario de Estado de los Estados Unidos. Y también está, por supuesto, por ahí otro funcionario. Vamos a ir con la señal, ¿te parece?
Crime's going to go down magically. You have to imprison them so you can liberate 350 million Americans that are asking for the end of crime and the end of terrorism. And it can be done. I mean, you're doing it already. And I'm sure that people have seen the change in the streets. A long way to go because you're just initiating their second term. But it's clear that, you know, even in Democrat-run cities, they get help from the work you're doing. So I'm really happy to be here, honored.
Well, we had a terrible thing happen. We had allowed people to come in freely into our country from not only South America, but from all over the world. Many from the Congo in Africa, Asia, all over the world, Europe, rough parts of Europe. And they came from prisons, and they came from mental institutions, and they came from the gangs of Venezuela, other places. And hundreds of thousands and even millions of them came. 21 million people altogether, but many of those people that came, was a tremendous percentage of criminals, in some cases violent criminals. We had 1,088 known murderers, half of them murdered more than one person. This was allowed by a man who, what he did to our country is just unbelievable. So we're straightening it out, we're getting him out. But what they did and what that party did to our country, open borders, anybody could come in. As soon as I heard that, I said, every prison's going to be emptied out into our country. That's what happened. It out, and we just had numbers. We had the highest in the history of our country going into police departments. And a year ago, we had the lowest numbers. You couldn't hire
The biggest change.
Nobody's
From the
ever
lowest to the highest.
And the military now, Marines, Army, Air Force, Coast Guard, every slot is, I mean, we have the best numbers we've ever had. We call it recruitment numbers. And we've never had anything like it. We had be forgotten. It's a sin what they did, and you are helping us out, and we appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you. Actually, what you're doing with the border is remarkable. It has dropped, what, 95%? It's incredible.
That, as of this morning, 99%, 99.1% to be exact.
Why are those numbers not in the media?
Well, they get out with the fake news, you know, like CNN over here doesn't want to put them out because they don't like putting out good numbers. They only like putting out because I think they hate our country, actually. But it's a shame. You're right. Isn't that a great question? Why doesn't the media? Why don't they put out numbers?
Yeah, 99%. I mean, it's crazy, right?
We're doing
It's
great.
a crazy turnaround.
Christy, could you maybe say a couple of words about the border? How we're doing?
You know, it's just been absolutely phenomenal what a great leader can do. Clear direction. Our laws matter. We should only have people in our country that love us, and the Border Patrol and our ICE officers and law enforcement officers have done fantastic work. So we're proud of them. Now we just need to get the criminals and murderers and rapists and dangerous gang members and terrorist organizations out of our country. So, Mr. President Bukele, we thank you very much for your partnership. It has been wonderful for us to be able to have somewhere to send the worst of the worst and someone to partner with. And we'd like to continue that partnership because it's been a powerful message of consequences. Mr. President, you wanted people to know that there was consequences if you break our laws and harm our people and endanger families. And this is a clear consequence for the worst of the worst, that we have somewhere to put them.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we even had this gang member from Venezuela, one of the ones you sent, and we interviewed him just to get some information, etc. from them. And he said, "Oh, well, I got arrested 6 times, but they released me the 6th time, so it should be released again." And then he said, "Well, but what's the last thing you do?" And he said, "Well, I shot a cop in the leg, but I didn't kill him. I just shot him in the leg." And we're like, this guy was arrested 6 times here in the United States, 6 times. He was released 6 times, and in the he was released 5 times, and the last time he was sent to El Salvador, right? So he's not getting released. But the last time he shot a cop, actually, and he shot him in the leg. So these are, like you said,
Right?
yeah, but there's something broken.
The liberal establishment. But they're not running things anymore in this country, and we're run by, and I don't say conservative, I don't say anything, we're run by people with great common sense.
Yeah, common sense.
Because it's all common sense.
Yeah.
It's not liberal conservative, it's common sense.
Exactly.
And, do you allow men to play in women's sports? Do you allow men to box your women and box? Because I know you have a lot of boxing.
That's violence.
It's abuse of a
Violence
woman.
against women.
It's abuse of a woman.
Totally.
But we have people that fight to the death because they think men should be able to play in women's sports. And some of those sports, it wouldn't matter much, but it still matters. But some of them are very dangerous for women.
Some years ago, like we said, a decade ago or so, women rights movements were pressuring so that we enacted specific laws to avoid men abusing women. And I think those laws were great because there were a lot of men abusing women. But now some of the same people are trying to backtrack on that and actually trying to make new laws allowing men to abuse women even in sports. So actually, that doesn't
do
make
it in
sense.
sports.
It doesn't make sense.
It's crazy. You know, they have weightlifting records, right?
Yeah.
A woman gets up, lifts weights, she's incredible. A guy gets up and beats her by 100 pounds. What are you going to do? A record that hadn't been broken in 18 years. You know, they put on an ounce, quarter of an ounce, eighth of an ounce for 18 years. Now they have a guy come up, ping. The whole thing is crazy. But they continue to fight. And I don't like talking about it because I want to save it for just before the next election. I said, my people, don't even talk about it because they'll change. And but I watched this morning, there was a congressman fighting to the death for men to play against women in sports. And you say to yourself, why? What are they doing, right? What are they doing? But your country's not too big in that.
No, of course not. We're big in protecting women.
We're good. That's right. It's a very important form of protection, too.
And as you can see, most of my cabinet are women, so
That's impressive.
yeah.
That's why
They're not the eye hires or anything.
They
They're
can
just
be.
great at what they do, right?
That's right. This is very impressive.
Yeah,
This
no.
is a first. We've had women, but we've never had three of them right here. That's
4 and 3
And
men.
look what we have. You guys feel a little bit mistreated? That's good. I like it. Well, we've been advanced. I've been very advanced in that regard too. We have Pam, who's been
Yes,
so
I know.
fantastic.
Christy.
And the most powerful woman they say
I
anywhere in the
know,
world.
exactly.
She's rated.
They're all afraid of her.
Susie Wells, they say, oh, she's tough. Most powerful woman in the world, according to magazines. What do I know?
Yes.
But I think she probably is.
Yeah, she probably is.
Yeah, she probably is.
Congratulations.
And you know, Stephen has done such a great job.
Yes.
We have great
He's
people.
very famous too.
But we love working with him. He really lets them have it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no games.
No. It's very good.
He knows. Do you have any questions, please? Go. Let's not start with CNN because they're just so wrong. Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. You repeatedly mentioned last night that Russia's attack on Ukraine was a mistake. What is the exact mistake? And have you given Putin a deadline
Yeah.
to actually move toward a ceasefire?
The mistake was letting the war happen. If Biden were competent, and if Zelensky were competent, and I don't know that he is. We had a rough session with this guy over here. He just kept asking for more and more. That war should have never been allowed to happen. That war, I went 4 years and Putin wouldn't even bring it up. And as soon as the election was rigged and I wasn't here, that war started. There was no way that war should have been allowed to happen. And Biden should have stopped it. And you take a look at Putin. I'm not saying anybody's an angel, but I will tell you, after 4 years, and it wasn't even a question. He would never. And I told him, "Don't do it. You're not going to do it." And it was the apple of his eye. But there was no way that he would have done it. All you had to do is lower oil prices. If you lowered oil prices, Biden kept the prices so high because he made it impossible to get it. If you lowered oil prices, you would have never had the war. But you wouldn't have had it with me anyway. That war would have never happened. And I think it's a great abuse. So now what do? You get a country where 25% of its land is gone, and the best locations, where millions of people are killed. You know, you haven't reported accurately the death. And this was Biden's war, and I'm trying to stop it. And I think we're going to do a good job. I hope we're going to do. They lose 2,500 young people a week, think on average. Now they're Russians and they're Ukrainians, but it's 2,000. We don't care. It's like whatever it is.
Intolerable.
They're not from your country. They're not from mine. But I want to stop it. 2,500. It's a killing field. It's like the Civil War. You take a look. I look at the satellite pictures. This should not be happening in our time. Of course, our time can be pretty violent, as we know. But that's a war that should have never been allowed to start. And Biden could have stopped it, and Zelensky could have stopped it, and Putin should have never started it. Everybody's to blame.
have you spoken to President Zelensky, sir, about his offer to purchase more Patriot missile batteries?
Oh, I don't know. He's always looking to purchase missiles. You know, he's against. Listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war. Right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size, and then hope that people give you some missiles. If we didn't give them what we gave, remember, I gave them javelins. That's how they won their first big battle with the tanks that got stuck in the mud, and they took them out with javelins. They have an expression that Obama at the time, Obama gave them sheets and Trump gave them javelins. But just something that should have never happened. It's a really shame. The towns are destroyed. Towns and cities are, largely destroyed. They have the spires, the beautiful spires that go up. They say they were the most beautiful in the world in Ukraine for whatever reason, but the most beautiful in the world, they're mostly laying on their side, shattered and broken. And most importantly, you have millions of people dead. Millions of people dead because of 3 people. I would say 3 people. Let's say Putin, number 1, but let's say Biden, who had no idea what the hell he was doing, number 2, and Zelensky. And all I can do is try and stop it. That's all I want to do. I want to stop the killing. And I think we're doing well in that regard. I think you'll have some very good proposals very soon.
Last question, sir. Have you attributed a motive, sir? Have you attributed a motive through the FBI investigation behind the attack on Governor Josh Shapiro over the weekend?
No, I haven't, but the attacker was not a fan of Trump, I understand, just from what I read and from what I've been told. The attacker basically wasn't a fan of anybody. It's probably just a whack job, and certainly a thing like that cannot be allowed to happen. Okay. I have a great relationship with this man. I have the best relationship with him. We've known each other. I've known him since he was a very young man, as I said, very, very young, and I was impressed. I said, look at this guy is, in fact, you sort of look like a teenager. You look like a teenager. I said, what kind of a country is this? He grew up well in the last 5 years.
Do you support the extension for nationals of El Salvador under?
I support him.
Do you plan to ask
I support him. Go ahead. Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CNN.
Do you plan to ask
Low-rated.
to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly
Which one is that?
deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam. Would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, 2 courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job. Thank you, Pam. Stephen Miller, wait a minute. Could you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also, please?
Yes. So Pam mentioned there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As 2 immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So we had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan
But
to
the
ask
Supreme
for
Court is
anyone to get
asking
it back?
to,
And what was the ruling in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor?
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual, at El Salvador's sole discretion, was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time. No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here, because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it for the court can only be directed to him.
I asked
¿Usted lo liberaría, Presidente Bukele?
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm suppose you're not suggesting that I'll smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's
I mean,
always
how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
You could release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world to the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into our
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people. Marco, do you have something to say about
Yeah, I mean, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin. Except for Venezuela, that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on your response just a few days ago.
How long do we have to answer this question from you? Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over, and that's why nobody watches you anymore? You have no credibility. Please, go ahead.
President Trump, how many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting to El Salvador? And President Bukele, how many are you willing to take from the U.S.?
As many as possible. And I just asked the president, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. Open borders. You probably hear open borders and you can't even understand it because nobody can understand. Nobody smart or with common sense can understand it. So we have millions of people that should not be in this country that are dangerous. Not just people, because we have people, but we have millions of people that are murderers, drug dealers. They've been allowed to come into our country by other countries that were very smart. When they heard that this very low IQ president, and by the way, I took my cognitive exam as part of my physical exam, and I got the highest mark, and one of the doctors said, sir, I've never seen anybody get that was the highest mark. I hope you're happy with that. Although they haven't been bugging me too much to take a cognitive, but I did do my physical and it was released. I hope you're all happy with it. I notice there's no question, so probably you are. but the cognitive. They said to me, "Sir, would you like to take a cognitive test?" I said, "Did Biden take one?" "No." "Did anybody take one?" "No, not too many people took them." I said, what about Obama? Did he take one?" "No, he didn't take one either." I said, "Let me be the only one to take one." But I've actually taken them 3 times already. I like taking them because they're not too tough for me to take. But we had a great physical exam, so I know you're going to ask that. And the doctors, who are total professionals, Walter Reed Medical Center, they're great people. And I visited a soldier that was badly wounded, incredible soldier, lost his leg, and I spent a lot of time with him. I mean, great, with his mother, and it was really a very great thing. They do a phenomenal job. I just want to say, Walter Reed, I was there for, 5-6 hours. You were there with me. But I took a full physical, and it came out perfecto, so that's good. That means you've got me for a little longer.
Would the U.S. be willing to pay for those facilities to be open if humans were going to be built?
I'd do something. We'd help them out, yeah. We help them out. They're great facilities, very strong facilities, and they don't play games. I'd like to go a step further. I mean, I said it to Pam. I don't know what the laws are. We always have to obey the laws, but we also have homegrown.
Muy bien, varios temas que se han desprendido en este momento de lo que precisamente han hablado el presidente Donald Trump y el presidente Bukele, en donde ha sido recibido en la Casa Blanca en el Salón Oval, tema del TPS, tema de seguridad en la frontera, también el tema de Kilmar Ábrego, ¿verdad? El salvadoreño que fue deportado, según reconoció la fiscal general Pam Bondi de los Estados Unidos, por error. Y bueno, estamos a la espera de la respuesta del presidente Bukele respecto al tema de si van a precisamente van a retornarlo, porque lo que ha dicho el presidente Trump es de que depende del Salvador que este salvadoreño regrese, aunque ya hay una orden de la Suprema Corte de los Estados Unidos de regresar. Vamos de nuevo con la señal.
Yeah, so I saw my poll numbers in your country. I'm through the roof, right? 91%. No, some people think they do it for the vote. But they don't have to do it for the vote. They cheat, they're professional cheaters. That's about the only thing they do well. So we just have had a great relationship, and it's become bigger because of a strange thing that happened. I came back. We had no war in Ukraine. We had no war we had no October 7th Middle East problem. We had nothing. We had no inflation. We didn't have the Afghanistan, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, the Afghanistan, not withdrawing, because I would have been I had it all set to bring people out with dignity and pride. That was the worst, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan. We didn't have any of that. You wouldn't have had the war with Russia, Ukraine. You wouldn't have had the Middle East problem because Iran was broke. They had no money because we had secondary sanctions on and lots of other sanctions. And now every single thing, got a problem with Iran, but I'll solve that problem. That's almost an easy one. We got to solve a war that should have never started, Ukraine and Russia, and we'll get that solved. And we have to solve problems, and we already solved inflation. If you look at the numbers are incredible, actually. Stock market's up, and we're not letting other countries take advantage of this country like they have for the last 40 years. So thank you very much. You have a question, please?
Mr. President, thank you so much. You scored another major investment win this morning when NVIDIA pledged to build its AI supercomputer, the first time ever, right here in the United States.
Thank you. That's a question I like. That's true.
What is your reaction to this announcement, sir, and how will this positively benefit Americans across the country?
Well, it's one of the biggest announcements you'll ever hear, because NVIDIA, as you know, controls that almost the entire sector, which is one of the most important sectors in the world, between chips and semiconductors and everything else. And they're the biggest, and the other biggest we already have coming in and spending $300 billion, as you know. They announced 2 weeks ago. but NVIDIA is so highly respected. And this was an announcement that a lot of people, I knew it was going to happen, but not to the extent that it happened. It's big. And the reason they did it is because of the election on November 5th and because of a thing called tariffs, as I say, the most beautiful word in the dictionary. After love, God, relationship, the press actually hit me. I said, tariff is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. What about family, love, God? So I got hit even on that. You understand? I said, okay. So now I say it's my 5th most favorite word because they get you on anything. But that NVIDIA, it's one of the great companies of the world, modern, super modern companies, controls segments that nobody, sort of controls the world in a sense, and they're coming in here in the biggest way with hundreds of billions of dollars. Not like millions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, and I'm honored by it. And I want to thank Jensen and all of the people that we deal with. They're great people. They're brilliant people. And without tariffs, they wouldn't be doing it. Okay? Thank you very much. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Considering additional sanctions against Russia after their latest attack, and do you have an update on the rate and when you might announce them?
Well, I already have sanctions on Russia. I put them there. If you remember, Nord Stream 2, that's the big pipeline that goes through Europe. I stopped it. That's Russia's pipeline, the largest pipeline, I think, in the world, goes to Germany. And I stopped it. And when Biden came in, he approved it. And then they say, oh, I'm friendly with Russia. No. Putin said, if you're my friend, I'd hate to see you when you're my enemy. I stopped the biggest economic job they ever had. I stopped it cold, right? It was dead. You know that, right? And Biden came in and he immediately approved it. What was that all about? And it's a pipeline that takes care of a lot of the needs. Now, it was a very controversial thing, but I stopped it and Biden approved it. Question? No, not you. Not Go ahead. What? Pharmaceuticals we're going to do. We don't make our own drugs, our own pharmaceuticals. We don't make our own drugs anymore. The drug companies are in Ireland and they're in lots of other places, China. And all I have to do is impose a tariff. The more, the faster they move in. The higher the tariff, it's inversely proportional. The higher the tariff, the faster they come. And we're going to be doing that. That's going to be like we have on cars. We have, as you know, a 25% tariff on cars. We have a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. And that's what that category fits right now.
Do you have a percentage in mind, a timeline?
I have a timeline, not too distant future. And we're doing it because we want to make our own drugs. We're doing it because we want to make our own steel and aluminum, lumber, other things. And they're all coming in. We have record numbers, $7 trillion. Since I announced, like a month and a half ago, since I came in, we have over $7 trillion being invested in the country. We didn't have $1 trillion. We didn't have $500 billion with some of these guys. I didn't know what the hell they were doing. So we have the largest investment that we've ever heard of, and we're only 2 months in. And that'll continue at levels that you've never seen before. That's what's going to happen. And even the stock market's up today. We also had, a lot of people didn't say it the way it was. We had the largest gain in the stock market in history on every single category last week. That was a nice game because we get a little hit because people didn't understand the power of our country economically if you use it right. Do you have something to say on that, JD?
Yes, sir. I mean, look, for 40 years we have lost manufacturing capacity. Workers have seen their wages stagnate, and some of the most critical things that we need, from the pharmaceuticals, the drugs that we give to our children, the antibiotics that we give to our kids, to the weapons that we actually need to fight a war, if God forbid we had to fight a war, we don't make enough of that stuff. And so President Trump ran explicitly on changing that. Yes, as the president mentioned, it caused a little bit of disruption in the market, but I actually think over the long term, Workers are going to benefit, stocks are going to go up, American businesses are going to benefit as we reinvest and reindustrialize our country.
And the auto workers and the Teamsters and all of the unions, not traditionally Republican, but I'm winning those unions by, we're up 40, 50 points on the Democrats. They're losing everything. They're losing everything because they just have policies that are not believable. They fight for policies that are 5% popular, and nobody knows who the 5% are. I mean, nobody can find the 5%. But if you go back to Ohio, and by the way, we have the great championship team from Ohio coming in today, right?
Very big day.
And that's going to be a little bit later. And that'll be, if you want to stick around, I'll introduce you to some nice people. You'll see some very large people, right? You'll see some people that even you have not seen, people like this. These are 6'7", 380 pounds with no fat. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay? But the team, the national championship team, is being honored today at the White House, so that'll be exciting. If you're around, you want to stay around, I'll have you up there. You can tell them all about your prison, how you have to behave. Okay. Who else is there? Yeah, please. Go ahead, please. Behind you.
You said yesterday that you're making a decision on Iran very quickly.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Is that a decision?
Well, they have to solve their problem very quickly. Iran wants to deal with us, but they don't know how. They really don't know how. We had a meeting with them on Saturday. We have another meeting scheduled next Saturday. I said, that's a long time. That's a long time. So I think that might be tapping us along. But Iran has to get rid of the concept of a nuclear weapon. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. He can't have a nuclear weapon. Nobody can have. We can't have anybody having nuclear weapons, We can't have nuclear weapons. And I think they're tapping us along because we're so used to dealing with stupid people in this country. And I had Iran perfect. You had no attacks. You would have never had October 7th in Israel, the attack by Hamas, because Iran was broke. They were stone cold broke when I was president. And I don't want to do it. I want them to be a rich, great nation. The only thing is, one thing, simple. It's really simple. They can't have a nuclear weapon. And they got to go fast because they're fairly close to having one. And they're not going to have one. And if we have to do something very harsh, we'll do it. And I'm not doing it for us, I'm doing it for the world. And these are radicalized people, and they cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Does that include a potential strike on Iranian nuclear facility?
Of course it does.
And just a follow-up question, a clarification. You mentioned that you're open to deporting individuals that aren't foreign aliens, but criminals to El Salvador.
Love it.
Does that include potentially U.S. citizens fully naturalized immigrants?
If they're criminals and if they hit people with baseball bats over their head that happen to be 90 years old, and if they rape 87-year-old women in Coney Island, Brooklyn, yeah, that includes them. What, do you think there's a special category of person? They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have bad ones too. And I'm all for it because we can do things with the president for less money and have great security. And we have a huge prison population. We have a huge number of prisons, and then we have the private prisons, and some are operated well, I guess, and some aren't. But he does a great job with that. We have others that we're negotiating with too. But no, if it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. Now, we're studying the laws right now. Pam is studying. If we can do that, that's good. And I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about really bad people. Really bad people. Every bit as bad as the ones coming in. And I made the statement when I heard about this a long time ago now, 4 years ago. When I heard that this guy was having open borders, I said every single criminal from all over the world is going to be dumped into our country. And that's what happened. Jails. The jails of the Congo were emptied out. The jails of Venezuela were emptied out. And you know what happened? Their crime went way down. But now Venezuela has other problems. You know what the problem is? They have no money. Yeah. Because I shut off their oil and we put secondary tariffs because they're not doing what's right over there. They know what to do. We spoke to them. I spoke to them. They know what to do. But they have no money. Venezuela has no money. But Iran had no money, and Iran behaved so beautifully. And then Biden took all those secondary tariffs and tariffs on. I told China, you can't buy oil. If you buy oil from Iran, China, I told it to President Xi, then we no longer want you to do business with the United States of America. And those ships disappeared from that harbor so quickly. China. Get along great with China.
Are the talks with Iran productive? Do you want to continue that?
What?
The talks with Iran, do you believe those are productive? Do you want to continue that?
I think Iran could be a great country as long as it doesn't have nuclear weapons. If they have nuclear weapons, they'll never get a chance to be a great country. They will never get a chance. It won't even come close.
Sir, on tariffs.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yesterday you mentioned short-lived product exemptions. Which specific products are you considering, and how long is short-lived? Weeks, months?
I'm looking at something to help some of the car companies where they're switching to parts that were made in Canada, Mexico, and other places, and they need a little bit of time because they're going to make them here, but they need a little bit of time. So I'm talking about things like that.
What about any Apple products, other cell phones?
Look, I'm a very flexible person. I don't change my mind, but I'm flexible. And you have to be. You just can't have a wall and you'll only go. No, sometimes you have to go around it, under it, or above it. There'll be maybe things coming up. I speak to Tim Cook. I helped Tim Cook recently, and that whole business. You know, I don't want to hurt anybody. But the end result is we're going to get to the position of greatness for our country. We're the greatest economic power in the world if we're smart. If we're not smart, we're going to hurt our country very badly. We lost with China over the Biden years trillions of dollars on trade. Trillions of dollars. And he let them fleece us. And we can't do that anymore. And you know what? I don't blame China at all. I don't blame President Xi. I like him. He likes me. I mean, you know, who knows? Who the hell cares?
Do you have any updates on?
But you know what? What?
Do you have any updates with talks with China?
No, let me just tell you this. I don't blame China. I don't blame Vietnam. I see they're meeting today. Is that wonderful? That's a lovely meeting. They're meeting, like trying to figure out how do we screw the United States of America. Don't forget, the European Union was formed to do just that. The European Union was formed to hurt the United States and on trade. And they get us on NATO because they don't pay their bills. But now, since I got involved, they have been paying their bills. I took in over $600 billion for NATO. Nobody took in anything. I mean, they were all delinquent. They had 8 nations out of 28 paid their bills. The rest of them were way delinquent. And I said, if you don't pay your bills, we're not going to protect you anymore. And the money poured in, over 600. The Secretary General last week made that statement. He said, I've never seen anything like it. We couldn't get anybody to pay because the United States was footing the bill for NATO. Well, we got hurt there, and we got hurt on trade, likewise, European Union. And they've got to come to the table. And they're trying to. They're trying to. But the European Union has taken terrible advantage. They don't take our food products. They don't take our cars. We have millions of their cars, BMW, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, many others. They come in by the millions. There are no Chevrolets in Munich, I can tell you that. I said to Angela Merkel when she was there, as she was letting millions of people infiltrate Germany, which was not so good we would call them illegal immigrants, but she made them legal. But I said to her, and I get along with her very well, I said, how many Chevrolets do we have in Munich or Frankfurt? Why, none, Donald, none. I said, you're right. And yet we take in millions and millions of cars. No, those days are over. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Head out the door. Thank you, guys.
Muy bien, ha finalizado esta reunión en el Salón Oval de la Casa Blanca. Vamos a repasar desde el inicio, cuando el presidente Bukele se presenta en la Casa Blanca y pues por supuesto todo el gabinete que le había acompañado o que le acompañó en esta visita oficial, ¿verdad? Desde muy temprano por la mañana definitivamente estaba ya prevista esta conferencia de prensa conjunta y pues todos los temas que se iban a abordar. La gran mayoría de los temas pues giraron en torno a el tema de seguridad de los Estados Unidos, la colaboración de El Salvador en cuanto a esto, ¿verdad? El tema del señor Kilmar Ábrego, ¿verdad? Que precisamente ha quedado en manos de El Salvador, según dijo el secretario de Estado norteamericano, y el presidente Donald Trump para que pueda decidir si lo regresan a territorio estadounidense. Aunque hay, como ya sabemos, una orden de la Suprema Corte de los Estados Unidos para regresarlo. Este es el momento de la llegada del presidente Bukele a la Casa Blanca. Fue recibido por el presidente Donald Trump. Posteriormente a esto ya vamos a poder ver y observar precisamente cuando ingresan también conjuntamente unos minutos después de que ingrese el presidente Bukele, ingresa también parte de su gabinete, ¿verdad? Gabinete de gobierno que le ha acompañado. Ahí va la ministra de Relaciones Exteriores Alexandra Gil Tinoco, la embajadora de El Salvador en Washington Milena Mayorga, el ministro de Seguridad, Justicia y Seguridad Gustavo Villatoro, el ministro de la Defensa Nacional Francis Merino Monroy y el resto de asesores, ¿verdad? Entiendo que la señora que iba de último es Sara Hanna, creo que es su nombre, y es una asesora del gobierno del presidente Nayib Bukele. Entonces, eso sobre la base de la expectativa que se había centrado en esta situación. Y bueno, pues los temas que ya vimos, se habló. La prensa insistió en el tema del TPS. El presidente Donald Trump se limitó a decir que hay excelentes relaciones bilaterales y de amistad y de cooperación con el gobierno del presidente Nayib Bukele. Bueno, el otro tema, por supuesto, fue el de Kilman Ábrego y la consulta que dijo Donald Trump harán a la fiscal general de los Estados Unidos, Pam Bondi, ¿verdad? Y por ahí, pues, las declaraciones de Stephen Miller, su jefe de gabinete de la Casa Blanca, que dijo que ningún tribunal puede imponer nada respecto a las políticas criminales implementadas, políticas para combatir el crimen implementadas por el gobierno del presidente Donald Trump, ¿verdad? Sí, en definitiva. Las preguntas también, bueno, marcó un poco la agenda el tema de Donald Trump, haciendo de lado el hecho de que comenzaran con las preguntas la cadena CNN. Me dijo, no quiero que empiecen las preguntas con CNN, y volvió a hablar de CNN al decir que pues no dicen la verdad de lo que Siempre dan noticias falsas, dijo, y por eso es que nadie los ve, dijo el presidente Donald Trump. Entonces, cosas como esas, ¿verdad?, que se lograron. De ahí se distrajo la atención a temas arancelarios, el tema de la guerra Rusia-Ucrania, el tema de China, el tema de Vietnam y todo eso, ¿verdad? Así es que bueno, estamos pendientes de ver si podemos hacer un enlace. Déjenme ustedes para poder revisar. Estas son fotografías cortesía de la Secretaría de Prensa, ¿verdad? Y bueno, sí, así es. Estamos ya prácticamente viendo lo que va a ser ya una reunión privada, ¿verdad?, entre los equipos que han acompañado al presidente y también los funcionarios de alto rango que acompañaron también a el presidente Donald Trump, ¿verdad? Estaba su vicepresidente J.D. Vance, estaba también el secretario de Estado de los Estados Unidos, Marco Rubio, entre otras también el Stephen Miller, su jefe de gabinete de la Casa Blanca, entre otros que acompañaron a el presidente Donald Trump. Por otro lado, bueno, de la contraparte, precisamente, ¿verdad? Bueno, parte de lo que dijo el presidente Bukele en la reunión, ¿verdad? Fue precisamente en las declaraciones que se produjeron durante la reunión con el presidente Trump. El gobierno de los Estados Unidos se enfrenta a la orden de un juez federal de traer de regreso a Kilmar Abrego, ¿verdad? Lo que sabemos, Donald Trump y Nayib Bukele sostuvieron este encuentro y bueno, el presidente salvadoreño dijo que no tienen la facultad para enviar de regreso a los Estados Unidos al inmigrante salvadoreño deportado por error Kilmar Armando Abrego García, al que Estados Unidos acusa de ser miembro de pandillas. Cuando le preguntaron al presidente si planeaba devolver a Abrego García, el mandatario dijo que eso era absurdo y también calificó a Abrego de terrorista. ¿Cómo puede El Salvador devolverlo a Estados Unidos contrabandeándolo? Claro que no lo vamos a hacer, no tengo la facultad de devolverlo, dijo ante una pregunta de un periodista de la oficina Oval, donde se reunieron. La respuesta del presidente Bukele vino luego de que la fiscal general de los Estados Unidos, Pam Bondi, dijo que el regreso de Abrego García depende de El Salvador, no nos corresponde a nosotros, dijo. Si El Salvador lo quiere devolver, nosotros lo vamos a facilitar, vamos a proveer el transporte aéreo, dijo Bondi. Pero Bukele negó que tuviera intenciones de dejarlo en libertad en su propio país. El asesor de Trump, Stephen Miller, añadió que si regresara a Estados Unidos lo volverían a deportar, fue lo que dijo Stephen Miller. Ahí está hablando Stephen Miller, es el jefe de gabinete, es Stephen Miller, asesor y su jefe de gabinete, ¿verdad? La semana pasada la Corte Suprema respaldó que la decisión de un juez federal que exigió a la administración Trump que facilitara el regreso de Ábrego García a Estados Unidos. Bueno, es parte, ¿verdad?, de lo que se discutió en con el presidente Donald Trump, ¿verdad? Y bueno, ya saben ustedes toda la camaradería y todo lo demás que precisamente estaba implicando esta reunión. Entonces, así, bueno, las cosas, estimados amigos paisanos, en esta reunión, que bueno, al final, como les digo, terminó siendo o desviándose a otros temas, como era el tema de la guerra con Ucrania y vamos a dejar a su jefe de gabinete, Stephen Miller, hablando precisamente del señor Kilma Ábrego, el salvadoreño que fue deportado, según reconoció la administración de Donald Trump, por error.
Would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As 2 immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan
But
to
the
ask
Supreme
for
Court's asking to.
And what was the ruling in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor.
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual, at El Salvador's sole discretion, was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time. No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here, because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it for the court can only be directed to him.
I asked
¿Usted lo liberaría, Presidente Bukele?
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to be not suggesting that I'll smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's
I mean,
always
how,
the
could
other.
how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like, could I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it.
Would you?
Ready, pop? Ready, open? Ready, close? Ready, shut? Ready, face?
President Sir, President Trump, your message to Christians during this Holy Week, sir, the start of Holy Week. Do you have a message for Christians, sir, during this Holy Week, sir?
Ready, pop? Ready, open? Ready, close? Ready, shut? Ready, face?
President Sir, President Trump, your message to Christians during this Holy Week.
Muy bien, ahí estaban las palabras de el subjefe de gabinete, ¿verdad? El señor Stephen Miller, quien reconfirmaba lo que yo les estaba diciendo a ustedes, que es el tema de que, bueno, si regresara eventualmente Kilmar Ábrego, lo deportarían inmediatamente. Además, estaba diciendo que ningún tribunal puede imponer ningún tipo de restricciones a las decisiones del combate de los criminales a el gobierno del presidente Donald Trump. Por su parte, el presidente Bukele estableció que no tiene facultades para poder, sale ocupado, dice. Ok, entonces estábamos nosotros estableciendo esto, ¿verdad? Sobre lo del presidente Bukele y que no tiene facultades de poder devolverlo definitivamente. Bueno, a ver, tenemos ya, entre otras cosas que ya, por supuesto, ustedes fueron testigos. Bueno, tenemos listo un enlace, vamos a tratar de digerir, de entender desde el análisis político de lo que ha acontecido. Tenemos vía telefónica a don Walter Araujo, analista político. Don Walter, buenos días, bienvenido a esta transmisión especial de Las Cosas Como Son, reunión histórica del presidente Trump, que recibe a Nayib Bukele en la Casa Blanca.
Gracias, buenos días, Natán, un saludo a toda tu audiencia. Y sí, en primer lugar, rescatando el momento y el hito del nivel del recibimiento de esta invitación al presidente Bukele a la Casa Blanca. Hay que comenzar y decirlo con mucha propiedad. He recibido en una base aérea que está destinada solo para altos mandatarios que los Estados Unidos conceden el honor de hacerle valga la redundancia, los honores militares. Desde su arribo al país, a Estados Unidos, en esta visita oficial, ha sido la primera vez que un mandatario ha recibido en esa forma en los Estados Unidos. Posteriormente, ya el histórico día de ahora, vemos, porque muchas veces las formas, las gesticulaciones, la forma en la que tú recibes a alguien indica mucho lo que son los aspectos físicos, emotivos de este encuentro, y fue recibido esta mañana por el presidente Trump con mucha alegría, cuando lo vemos al presidente con el puño en aras de vamos consiguiendo victorias y están recibiendo al presidente Bukele, inicia con un síntoma muy preciso. Pero aparte, vámonos a lo que acabamos de ver en tu programa y ha visto el mundo a través de diferentes cadenas, es la conferencia, el encuentro con la prensa, en donde debemos de entender una cosa. Aquí el protagonista y el que lleva la batuta y la prensa norteamericana está casi una hora de Trump y otro tipo de cosas. Pero en lo referente a El Salvador, lo que hemos escuchado, yo prefiero que el presidente Bukele, en aras de una inteligencia natural en él, de hablara bien por el presidente Trump, el vicepresidente Vance, el secretario de Estado, por la fiscal, por su jefa y su jefe de gabinete de la Casa Blanca, Ana Mayor del gobierno de los Estados Unidos. Y en el tema que era atinente a la pregunta sobre el caso del salvadoreño que fue deportado, hay que hablarlo con toda claridad. El presidente lo dijo, lo reafirmó el secretario de Estado Marco Rubio cuando dice: no entiendo la confusión, hay un salvadoreño delincuente que ha sido deportado y está en El Salvador. Y aquí el presidente Bukele contesta con mucha propiedad que quieren que yo les devuelva o trafique ilegalmente a un delincuente de Estados Unidos. No, no lo voy a hacer. Ahora, ese es el marco del encuentro, es una visita de un tiempo inusual que no se le ha dado a otros mandatarios, y ahora viene la reunión privada, Natán, que es lo que vamos a esperar, el comunicado conjunto cuando ambos mandatarios den a conocer qué es lo más importante de la reunión, es lo que viene, y un almuerzo posterior que ya es estrictamente protocolar y de buenos amigos en la Casa Blanca.
En definitiva, sí, se habló un poco de, bueno, la prensa preguntó sobre el tema de los tepecianos y el presidente Donald Trump se limitó a decir, don Walter, que hay excelentes relaciones de cooperación y de amistad en este momento con el gobierno del presidente Nayib Bukele.
Yo creo que ¿está bien? ¿Aló?
¿Me escucha, don Walter?
Sí, ahí voy. Yo te doy ahorita mismo la opinión. Creo que vamos con un poco de delay de donde yo me encuentro, pero bueno, lo que explico de eso es, y lo dijimos en análisis contigo de coyuntura las semanas anteriores, que no se esperaran milagros, que la construcción de un acuerdo de carácter especial para El Salvador no puede surgir como un arte de magia. La reunión que van a sostener en este momento es lo que ahora, pero escuchar del presidente Trump que existen excelentes relaciones entre nuestros países no hace sino abrir puertas a que el encuentro de fondo privado vaya ahondando y vaya aunando a que poco a poco vayamos caminando hacia lo que queremos para nuestros hermanos nacionales. El camino está trazado, el camino es un camino correcto, hay que dar para recibir, y voy a seguir sosteniendo esta tesis. Nosotros por primera vez estamos dando algo importante a un gobierno de Estados Unidos, y esa es la brecha que va a abrir el camino para futuras, óigase bien, sin andar anunciando con aspavientos, cosas que a veces no son posibles, que van a depender de la voluntad y de esa visión que tiene el gobierno del presidente Trump hacia el país y hacia el mandatario Bukele.
Sí, y precisamente de eso quería preguntarle, porque mayormente se centró el tema en la colaboración que está prestando El Salvador a lograr asegurar que van a salir los criminales que han entrado irregularmente a territorio estadounidense. Inclusive decía el presidente Donald Trump que habían platicado con el presidente Bukele y le había expresado, por supuesto, que existe la capacidad para poder seguir colaborando y prestando este servicio. Y lo otro es que, bueno, si hay necesidad de construir más infraestructura para poder seguir colaborando con el gobierno de los Estados Unidos en esta cruzada que tienen de sacar de territorio estadounidense a criminales del Tren de Aragua y de la MS-13, pues lo van a hacer. Eso creo que ha quedado contundentemente claro, don Walter.
Sí, claro, Natán, es que este es el kit del asunto, este es el cambio de aquel diálogo infructuoso bilateral, de ir a hablar a Estados Unidos, hablar en una conferencia sobre nuestros inmigrantes, nuestros tepecianos, y venir y la respuesta del gobierno de Estados Unidos, que bueno, somos amigos con El Salvador. Esto cambia completamente el panorama, cambia porque el tema que cambia la circunstancia es precisamente que nosotros en el país, por primera vez en la historia, le estamos dando algo que es importante para un gobierno, algo de per se, algo que es capacidad de hacerla uno, sin importar lo que puedan apoyar para hacerlo otros. Eso es la clave que inicia, no un diálogo, que inicia un proceso constructivo de soluciones a lo que a nosotros nos interesa, que es el estatus de nuestros hermanos salvadoreños, unos que están regularmente parados al TPS, los tepecianos, otros que tienen un estatus absoluta y completamente irregular por carecer de una estadía legal en Estados Unidos, y por lo tanto esta acción abona a ese punto. Eso es lo que han de estar tratando, y evidentemente no esperemos milagros hoy al almuerzo ni a la salida de la conferencia. Es un proceso en donde hay que ir demostrándole al gobierno hermano del presidente Trump de lo que somos nosotros, convencidos por principios y por valores que abrirán la puerta a las soluciones a nuestra gente.
Sí, definitivamente. El presidente Bukele dijo: no tengo poder para devolver a Kilmar Abrego. Fueron sus palabras prácticamente. Dijo el presidente que no tenía intención de devolver a Estados Unidos a Kilmar Abrego García, un inmigrante que fue deportado por error, según ha aceptado la administración del presidente Trump. Trump dijo que el presidente Trump, tras la reunión, pues esto fue un poquito lo que destacó. Después dice el presidente: ¿cómo puedo devolverlo a los Estados Unidos? Traficarlo de contrabando. Dijo Bukele a la pregunta de un periodista. La pregunta es
un criminal, es un criminal, miembro de pandillas, está en nuestro territorio y ahora le va a caer la justicia salvadoreña, y es la justicia salvadoreña la que se va a encargar de él, y no va a cometer el presidente Bukele un acto ilegal de mandar a un criminal ilegalmente para Estados Unidos. Este se queda aquí, será juzgado aquí y responderá ante la justicia salvadoreña.
En definitiva, vamos a ver cuál es el resultado de la reunión, don Walter, privada, por supuesto, a la que no va a tener acceso la prensa, las reuniones bilaterales. Lo que sí me llamó poderosamente la atención, que el presidente Bukele ha llegado con su gabinete de seguridad, ha llegado con el ministro Gustavo Villatoro, ministro de Justicia y Seguridad Gustavo Villatoro, ha llegado con el ministro de la Defensa Nacional Francis Merino Monroy y sus principales asesores. Eso denota definitivamente el interés y, bueno, el acompañamiento del presidente Donald Trump, de su vicepresidente J.D. Vance y también del secretario de Estado de los Estados Unidos, el señor Marco Rubio, y de su jefe de gabinete, Stephen Miller, y creo que estaba ahí también Pam Bondi, ¿verdad? Pam Bondi, la fiscal general de los Estados Unidos.
Es que es el más alto nivel en ambos gobiernos. Están las planas del más alto nivel, cosa nunca vista antes. Antes era recibido, claro, Obama recibió a presidentes salvadoreños, recibió el presidente Bush a presidentes salvadoreños, y se le recibía en una visita para la fotografía, como llamo yo, cuando fue todo entre ambos gobiernos.
Gracias, don Walter, por este enlace. Creo que hay una lectura bastante correcta de lo que ha pasado. No iba a ser el tema migratorio que marcara la agenda, sino más bien el tema de la seguridad y la colaboración que está prestando El Salvador. Vamos a ver qué es lo que en la reunión privada se discute, que sin duda alguna, pues ahí se podrá hablar ya con mayor propiedad sobre el tema de nuestros hermanos salvadoreños viviendo en los Estados Unidos de América.
Gracias, Natán, un saludo a la audiencia y quedamos a tus órdenes. Si hay más que comentar, pues lo conectamos. Muchas gracias.
Muy bien, muchísimas gracias. Gracias, don Walter. Definitivamente el análisis de lo que ha acontecido tiene bastante coherencia sobre la base de el tema de lo que dijo el presidente, ¿verdad? El presidente Bukele ha afirmado en la Casa Blanca que no liberará a Kilmar Abrego García, el hombre que fue deportado, según reconoció la fiscal general Pam Bondi, y también otro funcionario de gobierno que fue deportado por error, ¿verdad? En las declaraciones, insisto, ¿verdad? Que el presidente Trump hablaron también sobre deportistas trans, algo que el salvadoreño calificó como violencia, el presidente salvadoreño. Es durante esta reunión de este lunes en la Casa Blanca, Donald Trump y Nayib Bukele conversaron sobre atletas transgénero. El presidente estadounidense le preguntó a su homólogo salvadoreño en El Salvador si permitieran que los hombres participen en deporte femenino. Eso es violencia, respondió el presidente Bukele. Trump también afirmó que en Estados Unidos hay gente que lucha a muerte para que los atletas transgéneros puedan jugar, y Bukele respondió: nos preocupa mucho proteger a las mujeres. Bueno, y sobre el tema de Kilmar Ábrego García, el presidente de El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, dijo este lunes que no tiene la facultad para enviar de regreso a Estados Unidos al inmigrante salvadoreño deportado por error, Kilmar Armando García Ábrego, acusado precisamente de ser un miembro de una pandilla. Y cuando se le preguntó por parte de la prensa al presidente Nayib Bukele si planeaba devolverlo a García, el mandatario dijo que eso era absurdo y también lo calificó a Ábrego de terrorista. ¿Cómo puede ser que El Salvador va a devolverlo a Estados Unidos contrabandeándolo? Claro que no lo vamos a hacer, no tengo la facultad de devolverlo, dijo el presidente Bukele ante la pregunta de una periodista durante la conferencia en el Salón Oval. La respuesta del presidente Bukele, por supuesto, vino luego de que la fiscal general de los Estados Unidos, Pam Bondi, dijo que el regreso de Ábrego García depende de El Salvador. No nos corresponde a nosotros, dijo. Si El Salvador lo quiere devolver, nosotros lo vamos a facilitar para proveer transporte aéreo, afirmó. Pero Bukele negó que tuviera intenciones de dejarlo en libertad en su propio país. El asesor de Trump, Stephen Miller, añadió que si regresara a Estados Unidos, lo volverían a deportar, ¿verdad? Cabe destacar que la semana pasada la Corte Suprema respaldó la decisión de un juez federal que exigió a la administración Trump que facilitara el regreso de Ábrego García a Estados Unidos. Ábrego García fue arrestado por el Servicio de Inmigración el 12 de marzo y deportado días después, pese a que un juez de inmigración estadounidense lo protegió de la deportación, argumentando que probablemente enfrentaría persecución por parte de pandillas locales que aterrorizaban a su familia. Bueno, y ya sabemos lo demás, ¿verdad? Y todo lo que ha pasado, ¿verdad? Y la llegada precisamente del presidente a la Casa Blanca y la reunión. De ahí otros temas que precisamente se abordaron, que no tenían nada que ver con esto que se ha establecido, ¿eh? Y en parte también una de las intervenciones del presidente en el encuentro, ¿verdad?, sobre el tema del encarcelamiento de miles. A mí me gusta decir que en realidad, dijo, liberamos a millones. Presidente Donald Trump, quien le dio la frase, ¿crees que pueda usarla? Dice, o sea, el presidente Trump pidiéndole al presidente Bukele de que en realidad no están encarcelando a miles, sino que están liberando a millones, ¿verdad? Así las cosas en relación a la reunión del presidente Nayib Bukele y su homólogo allá en la capital de los Estados Unidos. Vamos a estar muy pendientes de lo que se desprenda de esta reunión privada. Este es un día de trabajo, sin duda alguna, de el gabinete que acompaña al presidente Nayib Bukele, y también, pues por supuesto, las reuniones privadas, el almuerzo que es parte del protocolo que se ofrecerá en la Casa Blanca, y por supuesto vamos a ver que a su retorno de los Estados Unidos el presidente Bukele tiene que anunciar al país. De entrada, pues es lo que se pudo establecer públicamente, y ya pues ustedes saben y lo pudieron ver a través de esta programación especial de las cosas como son en este día de reunión del presidente Nayib Bukele con su homólogo estadounidense Donald Trump allá en la capital de los Estados Unidos, Washington, Distrito de Columbia, en la Casa Blanca, en el Salón Oval. Bueno, creo que llegamos hasta aquí con esta transmisión. ¿verdad? Y nos quedamos a la espera, por supuesto, del avance que vaya teniendo la información, que vaya fluyendo en las próximas horas y pues estaremos pendientes. Tenemos esta tarde noticia del día en las cosas como son, así que por favor, mis estimados amigos paisanos, vamos a ir preparándonos para esta tarde con lo más importante, por supuesto, que hablaron tanto el presidente Trump como el presidente Bukele, precisamente claro, y claro está a lo que concierne a nuestro país, ¿verdad? Gracias por haberme acompañado. Saludos cordiales, bendiciones totales.